how do you see the United States as it starts collapsing? Are they going to do some crazy stuff? Like, because you've got Gary Gensler, who knows exactly what Bitcoin is, and yet he says he doesn't know what it is or whatever. And I think I saw Kathy Wood recently say she thinks he's making a move to be Secretary of Treasury. Anyway, but how do you see this American collapsing empire? It is collapsing. It's not will it collapse? It is collapsing. It's just how deep will the collapse go? How far will it go? But how is America going to react to this?
Poorly.
In your eyes.
I mean, the reaction is going to be bad. It's already, you already see signs of it because the collapse is happening. It's just not evenly distributed. So in cities like Chicago and in other cities, they're already in free fall. They're already looting, mass looting on the streets, mass, violence. It's already become road warriors in a lot of places already in the United States. So, and that's growing, and people are leaving. It's what's amazing with El Salvador is actually they're experiencing reverse migration. There's more people fleeing to El Salvador now. They're migrating to El Salvador as economic freedom, as a safe, secure environment with a president who is a visionary and a great leader, right? These are all very attractive attributes, all very great bullet points why you would go and live in a country with all these opportunities. There are strong opportunities there. And so, the SEC and Gary Gensler, they've been trying, I think, to, as I said earlier, they needed to get Binance and CZ out of the way before they let the spot market ETFs for Bitcoin trade. And so they were successful in doing that. In the US, you have something like 90% of the wealth is now concentrated in 5% of the population or less. And that trend toward feudalism is getting sharper. So you'll have 99% of the wealth will be in the hands of 0.01% of the population. So you're back to feudalism. You're back to lords and serfs. So you'll have, and those people will build very tall walls, and they'll live in those gated communities with their own armed militias, and they'll have everything that they need inside the castle, and everyone outside of the castle, will be in a very bad state, but that seems to be the trend, and there's no political will to fight that. The way to get the population to sign on to that is twofold. Number one, they'll bring in CBDC, central bank digital currencies. So the way that they'll do that is they'll say, oh, hey, you've got $10,000 in your account. We're going to convert that to a CBDC and give you 100,000 of the CBDC. And you're like, wow, that's awesome. I'll take 100,000 of your CBDC. Thank you. But, within 6 months, the purchasing power of that 100,000 in CBDC will be less than the purchasing power of the 10,000 you gave up to get the CBDC. You'll be a lot poorer because they'll print at an accelerated rate. The CBDC will be printed at 10 to 20 times the rate that they're even printing the dollar. So it's a recipe toward hyperinflation, and it's a very strong surveillance technology. So it'll be impossible to really not be part of what I call the casino gulag at that point, where people are basically chained to online platforms playing video games for a few points to swap out for a CBDC coin to buy a protein pill to stay alive another day. It's really like a prison. It's an electronic prison, but it looks like a casino. So it's like Las Vegas, but you can't leave the slot machine. You can't leave. The only way you can get a protein pill is to stay there and keep clicking on the fruit machine. That's it. Which a lot of people do. If you go to Vegas and you see people banging those fruit machines, like they're doing it, like they're already zombies in some kind of quasi-conscious state of narcolepsy or whatever. So that'll be applied toward 200 million people. and they'll all be playing the America casino game in the casino gulag, and they'll be, you know, the guys at the top will be living in their castles and flying around, and but that's the transition that's happening right now.
Yeah.
So there's no political agenda to stop it. Certainly not on the Democratic side. They're the worst offenders, right? They believe that all politics is based on you know, cultural agenda, identity politics
Yeah.
is all their politics, and that, of course, is the same thing as Mao Zedong. That was this cultural revolution. That if we all wear little green jackets and carry a little red book, everyone will be happy. That's the Democrats are essentially Maoists in America, and they are trying to impose communism, and it's working, right? So Joe Biden is like a demented version of Mao Zedong, essentially.
He seems more like a Reagan Republican to me. Like he seems.
Well, I mean, I mean, you know, the Reagan. Anyway, you know, that's a bit of a see Reagan. You know, we can talk differently about Reagan, and because it's a slightly different story. But so therefore, since they control the narrative in the media, pretty much, you know, people are like unaware of this. That it's happening. They're kind of just sleepwalking into this neo communism. So there's no pushback really. And so okay, on the right, okay, now you're talking Republicans. So then, you know, you're going to be talking the Republican Party and Trump and Reagan and stuff. I mean, that's a different political you know, approach. You know, this is more for me, I'll say I identify more with that side of the aisle. I don't identify with the left side of the aisle. I'm much more on the right side of the aisle. So I know that in this space, you know, the liberal comedian space, there's a pushback against the right wing side of things. But never, you know, I'm happy to talk about it. Yeah, I'm always willing to learn. You know, maybe I'm missing something, but you know what I'm saying? Like Jimmy Dore, you know, Jimmy Dore is still really hoping that the left, the liberals, the progressives, you know, get something done. You know, and it's very admirable that he would have those feelings. But at what point do you say I got to take a different approach? It's not going to ever happen. It's not going to happen. And you got to look at the other side of the aisle and start considering some things that they have been saying that maybe you have been overlooking, sadly, because now let's go to Argentina, right? So Argentina just elected a new president, Javier Milei, and he is very much in this new post nation state, post central bank, post fiat money mold, which is more on the Ron Paul side of the equation. Okay.
Yeah. Let me address a couple things here. So for me, I don't call myself liberal at all. I'm an anti-war, pro-labor socialist. I think the two-party system is awful. I don't like the Democrats. I don't like the Republicans, and I have given up any hope that there's going to be some left revolution. America's done. I just tell people buy Bitcoin and grow your own food. But so I just want to say that. And I think that's if you follow the money, both parties, you know, they both support war. They both support Wall Street bailouts. It's
let me jump in here again for a second.
Okay.
So, when talking about the left, essentially what you're talking about is labor. Okay. That labor, the labor force, needs representation in government, and they need representation in the economy, and they need organized labor, and they need someone fighting for them for higher wages. And the issue is that either one of a couple things can work. Either you have a central bank like the Federal Reserve Bank and you have a very strong organized labor force. So in other words, the central bank works for the oligarchs, and organized labor would work for labor, and that the labor would fight to have their wages tied to money supply. So the average hourly wage right now would be closer to $50 to $60 an hour to keep pace with the amount of money that goes into Wall Street's pockets. Okay, that's one system that could work. Or you could have no central bank and you have no organized labor. This would be more of a free market system. And that would also work. It has its pluses and minuses, but it would also work. The worst possible combination would be that you have a central bank and you have no organized labor, which is what you have in the United States right now.
Right.
Right. And that's the worst.
Yes.
So, and then labor will have no ability to fight the central bank by lobbying for higher wages and higher benefits, and by getting the Democratic side to give them more food stamps. That will never equal the playing field. Their only way to equal this playing field is to get onto Bitcoin. By essentially walking away from the entire fiat money system, central banking system, and going on a Bitcoin standard. And we already see what's going on in El Salvador as a good example of what happens when you go on a Bitcoin standard. President Bukele just gave a brilliant speech where he's saying that, he was told when he came into office that if he got rid of the gangs, he would kill the economy, because the gangs are a central part of the economy. There's also not only the gangs themselves who are extorting billions and then recycling that into the economy, but there's the families that they support. And then there's a lot of ancillary jobs that go into the whole gang economy. So, his decision was that I'm unwilling to accept that. I'm going to get rid of the gangs. I'm going to take crime out of the GDP figures. And he did. And guess what? The economy actually went up, because now you've got people on the streets without fear who are assembling, getting together, creating new companies, creating jobs, and the economy, tourism's up, companies are moving in. I mean, they thought in El Salvador they would have 1 or 2 years of economic downturn, but in fact, they had no economic downturn. It's been straight up. So you don't need to have an economy run by crooks is the message. In the UK, for example, I'll give you an example. A few years ago, the UK decided that, our debt to GDP doesn't look very attractive. We have too much debt and not enough GDP. So the exchequer of the exchange is going to include now both heroin sales and prostitution in our GDP, so that the debt will look smaller. Right. And that was a public policy. That was a policy that they put forward and stated it as such, that prostitutes are hardworking and, we should include them in GDP. Heroin users are helping to support their communities. We should include that in GDP. So this is the strange world we live in, where there's no differentiation in the economy between somebody looting $900 at Target and somebody paying for something for $900 at Target, because at the end of the day, they're just triggering a $900 bailout in one shape or another, more money printing. And then you've got this Titanic sized problem sinking into the sea of fiat money abyss. And okay, so the left is completely incapable of doing anything. On the right, I think that's the only place you're going to find some smart people stepping forward. That's where you find most of the Bitcoin support. Putting, let's say, RFK aside for a second, Robert Kennedy Jr. is come out, he's been talking about Bitcoin. He understands Bitcoin, but now he's an independent because he couldn't get any hearing in the Democratic Party. Right. Mm-hmm. So mostly it's on the right. And this is a global phenomenon. It hews toward hard money. It's a hard money standard, a hard money economy, a gold, better than gold, having a gold money standard. And so that's where the answers are, because there's no answers on the left anymore. I mean, this is where Javier in Argentina, he is incredibly animated when he talks about the quote unquote libtards and, you know, socialists as scum. And now these are his words. He's completely attacking the left and the liberals and the progressives, and with a chainsaw, you know, like he's going to take a chainsaw and just and cut this cancer of their socialist agenda out of the economy, and that won him the election. And if you look at it in terms of Bitcoin, it starts to make some sense, right? And anyway, so that's my answer to that.
So, well, let me address a couple of things here. I think, yeah, there is no real left in America anymore. It's the Democratic Party is not the left. They're a corporate, you know, it's part of the kleptocracy.